Back. Well, the Pegasus Vertical Business Jet will be the first airplane to provide true business jet performance coupled with helicopter convenience. Now, the VBJ will make point-to-point travel feasible with multiple innovations that will make airplanes safer and easier to fly, even for the newly qualified PPL pilots with a type rating, of course. Well, to tell us more on this, Dr. Reza is an aesthetic doctor, but also the CEO and founder of this. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Firstly, tell us, how revolutionary is this?
Well, it's the first airplane in the world that will be able to do this. Take off like a helicopter, fly like a plane, but fly at 4 times the speed and range of a helicopter. So think about flying out to sea to rescue someone on a ship.
Yeah.
You would be able to wait for them a lot longer if you had to try to wait for the helicopter.
Yeah.
So really it's a way to bring the two worlds together and probably make it unnecessary for anybody to own a helicopter anymore.
Wow. I mean, how did this come about though?
I just had an idea. Although I do mainly focus in aesthetic medicine.
Right, yeah.
I like to explore different diverse business ideas, and I guess the Vertical Business Jet, I wanted to make a South African airplane.
Right.
And I thought if I want to make something that the world will buy, it needs to be unique, it needs to be really different, something that will call out to them. And so vertical takeoff is where I saw the niche.
Where else is it happening around the world? Is this the first?
This is the first.
Yeah.
So we have been awarded the patent locally, and we're patent pending in the USA and the EU. There are other concepts for vertical takeoff, but it's more for shorter range things like air taxis within a city.
Right.
Ours is more like, fly from London to the USA or from Dubai to most of the world. From here, it would take, I guess, a single stop to get to London. So it really is just to bring helicopter convenience and safety, security, combining that with flying 6.5 hours actually.
Yeah. Take us from idea to production. What's that process like?
Well, it was a lot longer than I thought it would be. I've been busy with this since 2012.
Right.
That's when I first had the idea. I was sitting in an airport brainstorming, thinking, how do I make this plane unique? And I found some like-minded engineers to work with me on the project. They did conceptual design studies. We then worked and I did financial feasibility modeling, market research at various air shows around the world.
Yeah.
And really step by step, I think every time I was confident enough to move on, I would take another step.
Right.
And we are actually at a very big point right now because the engineers have just started working full-time on the project at our offices, thanks to a recent fundraising effort that we just closed yesterday. Actually, a public fundraising effort, which we saw as a new way of doing crowdfunding. So we took public company, the old way, with social media marketing, which is the new way, and we brought that together to give us a kind of a boost to speed up the project.
How much does something like this cost?
Over the next 5 to 7 years, it should cost us about $50 million. But I know it sounds like a lot. However, if you had to do this anywhere else in the world, it would almost cost you, 8 to 10 times the price because the engineers are more expensive. Yeah. Our engineers are very innovative, very smart group of people, but they're a lot less expensive than US or UK engineers.
So your engineers are from South Africa?
All South African.
Yeah.
And
how do you pick them? How does it go about getting this group together?
Well, we just have to find the ones that are the smart enough, innovative. It's a small world, so people can identify who's best at what aspect. Yeah. And our head engineer, Matthew Buttle, he's in charge of all of that type of selection. Right. But a project like this 10 or 15 years ago would have cost $1 billion. Right. Because computational fluid dynamics wasn't where it is now. So in order to test the wing, you'd have to build it in the best way you thought it would work, break it, and then put that data back into the drawing board and make another wing. Whereas you can do that all now virtually on a computer. Yeah. And that's what saves us most of the money. Right.
In terms of your clientele, who are you appealing to?
Politicians, businessmen, companies. It's anybody that previously would have had a helicopter and a business jet. Yeah. But the way we've been looking at the model and the market, anybody who would have previously bought a helicopter. So really it is a much larger market than we actually previously envisioned.
And already you're getting some interest?
A lot, yes. So we've already got people asking us about putting down deposits to reserve spots on the production line, even though it's still 5 to 7 years away from still delivery. That's how long it takes in aviation projects, and so people do have that foresight, and they're ready to make commitments.
In terms of the manufacturing of this, does one plane take about 5 to 7 years to build?
Oh, no. Yeah. So that's more the design, the final design work, flight testing and certification to get the licensing and approvals to be able to sell these to international markets. South Africa is in a fortunate position because we have a bilateral agreement with the USA, which not many countries have, which allows us to export into that market. And it's still 67% of the business jet market. So although another fortunate position is BRICS, because India and China will be the second biggest target that we would have. And that's because, their GDP grows faster than their business jet market should be. And that's because of infrastructure. So airports and runways, they just can't build them fast enough. And so if you can give them a plane that can land wherever they want it to without building an airport, you really can tap into that. So our country is in a really fortunate position.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because, often people are asking us, how is BRICS working? How is this grouping working? Practically, what can we see? And you saying that this grouping of nations is actually working to your advantage.
It is, definitely. And I think what we have to do is take advantage of what we already have in the form of infrastructure and expertise that's still left in our aviation sector. It's one of the things, if we don't tap into and we don't use and don't explore, it will die out with the group of engineers that used to work at Denel in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And so this, for me, is a way that we can hand down the knowledge to younger engineers and retain that and retain our position that, if you think about it, China and India are spending billions to try to catch up to what we still have. And if we lose it, it will never come back.
Aviation safety is a huge issue, isn't it? I mean, of late we saw planes falling from the sky, basically, I mean, how safe is this plane?
It will be safer than a helicopter. So what you have to think about is that if a helicopter loses engine power, it will crash. I mean, you do have auto rotation and hopes of recovering, but you can't really glide like a plane. So as soon as we are over about 60 knots, you'll be able to glide just like any plane. And we're using more than one engine, so it's very unlikely that you'll have a situation where you need to glide. But if you have to, a lot safer than a helicopter.
How fast is it?
Pretty much 800 kilometers an hour.
And that compared to the other jets of its kind?
Any other business jet would fly about 800 or 900 kilometers an hour. A helicopter maximum speed about 250 kilometers an hour. And the reason is because of what they call retreating blade stall. So everybody thinks about Airwolf. When you're a kid, we used to watch Airwolf. Had boosters, it could really fly. That would never happen in real life because the wind flowing over the blade that's moving backwards, eventually that airflow becomes too slow to support lift and the helicopter will fall out of the sky. And so that's the limiting factor.
Doctor, thank you very much indeed for coming and explaining it.
It is
very, very interesting. And when it's up and running, we'll like to come there and maybe get a bit of a ride on it.
Yeah, please. Most welcome.
That was Dr. Reza. He's talking about the Pegasus Vertical Business